In an armored world, how do we trust vulnerability?
I, I think that the first approach is to understand that we do live in a world that forces us to armor ourselves. That so much that we encounter is not that which creates a sense of certainty, but rather uncertainty, especially the secondary media, meaning that which is influencing us as just a constant reminder that the world is falling apart, that there's no hope here, that all is lost. In other words, this is the constant mantra of a world that does force us to put armor on. I mean, even armor against, I can't allow this much toxicity into my system. I can't put up with this much anger. And that is where the armor is of value, because it doesn't let everything in. And it's good to cultivate, in a way, responses to different conditions or environments, territories, because not every place is as safe as other places. So the question of taking our armor off really is about condition and about place. You can't do that if you don't feel safe. If you don't feel safe, you can't trust the vulnerability because it's too expensive. It might injure you. And we're very instinctual creatures, so we put things to the side in the immediacy of the given circumstances. And if we think about a world that is seemingly very aggressive, very difficult, and costs so much just to get through the day in terms of how do I do this, how do I do this with my kids, how do I do this with the world, you know, these are pressures that everyone is under. I mean, this is the shared sort of collective anguish of the moment, is everyone is suffering from, I'm overburdened, I'm overwhelmed, there's just too much information, too many demands, too many things. And then on top of that, when you say, well, trust your vulnerability, it's like, well, how do I do that? So the question, as I go back to saying, is a question of space and place. And I also feel that it is not something that we can look at as reactive, meaning that when I take the armor off or when I trust my vulnerability, these are the questions of, do we give ourselves permission to be intimate with ourselves? Do we give ourselves an opportunity to calm the world down? Can we find a place to be quiet? Can we say, at least here, these things matter to me, so I'm going to attend them? Then it's not being vulnerable, it's asking questions that allow us to engage that which lets our vulnerability have a voice. Otherwise, our armor doesn't let that happen. And this is one of the problems we find so often in this world. We come home, we're in a state of defensiveness or a type of aggressiveness, and then we are in a situation where we really have to calm down and realize, I love these people. They are the source of my heart. They are my home. They are my roots. And so often, as we know, there's such anguish because people are the most abusive to that which they love the most. And so the question became, well, how do we, in a world that armors us, because if you're wearing armor in the bedchamber, it's not very good. If you're wearing armor when you embrace your children, it's not very good. If you're wearing armor when you hear another point of view, it's not very good, because you're not letting anything in. So the question for us is, how do I do it? And I say incrementally, by suggesting, I think this is important as well. I give myself permission to ask questions of, how are we in this together? Not how are you against me, which I might feel if I'm in the outer world. Do you see? I have to turn and look at the person I love and say, we're in this together, we're partners. And I realize that our love is what is real. Our love is what creates the roots. And our love will allow us to be vulnerable, and when we need to put the armor on, but to not keep the armor on with one another. And that's why much of our truth is to think about where you live, where you love, who you love, and why what you love matters more than the ferocious argument of the world. And if you see that, then that's just a weather condition. But what you're cultivating is the garden of your heart, the garden of your wisdom, and the garden of your soul. And to do that, it insists upon vulnerability and armor to be worn wisely in the defense of that which you love, but not to be against what you love, rather for it. Thank you.